I rehearsed the news of my promotion for 20 miles, foolishly hoping this Thanksgiving might be different. But when I stepped into the dining room on Cedar Hollow Lane, the humiliation was already plated and served. My chair was gone. In its place sat a potted fern, as if I had never existed. My mother smoothed her napkin, offering a tight, poisonous smile, while my father delivered the only welcome I would receive. No seat for disappointments. The leather steering wheel of my sedan was cool under my palms, but my hands were sweating. I wiped them, one at a time, on the fabric of my dress pants. It was a 40-minute drive from my apartment in Westmere to the sprawling, manicured silence of Briar Glen, and I had spent every single minute of it rehearsing. I breathed in, I breathed out, I adjusted the rearview mirror. Though it did not need adjusting, I am 33 years old. I told myself, I am a senior data analyst at Northbank Analytics Group. I manage a team of 12 people. I pay my own mortgage. I do not need to be afraid of a dinner party. But this was not just a dinner party. It was Thanksgiving at Cedar Hollow Lane, and in the Hall family, holidays were not celebrations. They were performance reviews. I merged onto the highway, keeping my speed exactly at the limit. My parents, Dale and Marjorie Hall, did not believe in speeding tickets, just as they did not believe in unironed shirts or public displays of emotion or failure. To be a Hall was to be seamless. It was to present a surface so polished that no one could see the cracks in the foundation. For years, I had tried to be the daughter they wanted. I had chosen the sensible degree. I had bought the sensible car. I had dated the sensible men, none of whom ever quite measured up to the invisible yardstick my mother kept tucked in her purse. And yet, somehow, I always fell short. I was the practice child, the rough draft. The one they had made mistakes on before they perfected their parenting technique on my younger brother, Ethan. Today was supposed to be different. I glanced at the passenger seat where a Dutch apple pie sat in a pristine white box. I had baked it myself, from scratch, waking up at 5 in the morning to ensure the crust was flaky and the apples were sliced with surgical precision. It was perfect. It had to be. But the real offering was not the pie. It was the news I was carrying, tucked inside my chest like a fragile bird. 2 days ago, my boss at Northbank had called me into her office. She had told me that my predictive modeling project had not only saved the client millions, but had become the new standard for the entire division. She had offered me a promotion, a significant one, senior lead consultant, a corner office, a salary that made my stomach flip. I had not told my parents yet. I had saved it for today. I had imagined the moment 1,000 times. We would be sitting at the long mahogany table. The candles would be flickering. I would wait for a lull in the conversation, perhaps after the turkey had been carved. And I would say it casually, "Oh, by the way, I was promoted this week," and in my imagination, my father would finally put down his fork. He would look at me, really look at me, and his eyes would crinkle at the corners. "Good work, Hazel," he would say. "We are proud of you." It was a childish fantasy. I knew that in reality, their praise was a double-edged sword. If I told them, my mother would likely ask why it had taken so long. My father would ask if the salary was comparable to what his friend's son was making in finance. They would take my success, turn it over in their hands, and find the flaw in it. They always did. But I still wanted to tell them. I still wanted to hand them my achievement and see if, just this once, it would be enough to buy my seat at the table. The scenery changed as I exited the highway. The strip malls and gas stations of the suburbs gave way to the rolling hills and stone walls of Briar Glen. The trees here were older, their branches arching over the road like cathedral ceilings. The lawns were vast and emerald green, defying the November chill. I turned onto Cedar Hollow Lane. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was a physical reaction, a Pavlovian response to the geography of my childhood. My body remembered being 12 years old and terrified of spilling juice on the rug. My body remembered being 16 and being told my laughter was too loud for polite company. I pulled into the long, winding driveway. The first thing I noticed was the cars. Usually, Thanksgiving was an intimate affair. Just the immediate family, perhaps one or two stray relatives. But the driveway was packed. I recognized my Aunt Cynthia's sedan. I saw my cousin Lydia's compact car tucked near the garage. But there were others. A sleek black luxury SUV with a personalized plate. A vintage convertible that belonged to a distant uncle I had not seen in a decade. My stomach tightened. This was not a dinner. This was an event. I parked my car at the very end of the line, half on the grass, careful not to leave tire marks. I checked my makeup in the mirror one last time. Neutral tones, nothing flashy. My hair was pulled back in a severe, neat bun. I looked professional. I looked capable. I picked up the pie box. It felt heavy in my hands. As I walked toward the front door, the house loomed over me. It was a beautiful house, a colonial revival with white pillars and black shutters. It looked like a picture from a magazine, which was exactly how my mother liked it. She treated the house not as a place to live, but as a stage set. I could hear voices coming from inside, laughter, the clink of glass. I reached for the doorknob, then hesitated. A sudden, cold intuition washed over me. Something was wrong. The air felt charged, heavy with static. It was the same feeling I used to get right before my father would call a family meeting to discuss our grades. A sense of impending judgment. I pushed the thought away. I was 33. I was a senior lead consultant. I was not a frightened child. I opened the door. The foyer was warm and smelled of cinnamon and expensive perfume. My mother had hired a coat-check girl, a teenager I did not recognize, who took my beige trench coat without a word. "Hazel, you made it!" I turned to see my Aunt Cynthia drifting toward me, a glass of wine in her hand. Her smile was a little too bright, her eyes darting around the room. "Hello, Aunt Cynthia," I said, leaning in to kiss her cheek. Her skin smelled of lavender and anxiety. I didn't know it was going to be such a big party. "Oh, you know your mother," Cynthia said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "She loves to host. It is quite the gathering. Even Kerrigan Slate is here." I froze. Kerrigan Slate. She was not a relative. She was a family friend, a term that did roughly the heavy lifting of a bridge support. Kerrigan was a fixer, a consultant, a woman who moved in the high society circles my parents desperately wanted to rule. She was polished, ruthless, and terrifyingly expensive. If Kerrigan was here, this wasn't just a party. It was networking. It was business. "I see," I said, keeping my voice even. "Is Mom in the kitchen?" "She is in the dining room," Cynthia said. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw a flicker of pity in her eyes. It chilled me more than the cold wind outside. "Hazel, honey, maybe you should get a drink first." "I am fine," I said. "I have the pie." I walked past her, down the hallway that was lined with portraits of our ancestors. Stern men and women who looked down at me with disapproval. I reached the archway to the dining room. The room was magnificent. The chandelier was fully lit, casting a golden glow over the table. The table itself was extended to its full length, set for 20 people. The china was the good stuff, the gold-rimmed Wedgwood that we were forbidden to touch as children. Crystal goblets sparkled at every setting. Guests were milling about, holding cocktails, chatting in low, respectful tones. I saw my brother, Ethan, standing near the window. He was talking to the man who owned the black SUV. But when he saw me, he looked away. He studied the carpet as if it contained the secrets of the universe. That was my second warning. Ethan never ignored me. We were allies, survivors of the same silent war. If he couldn't look me in the eye, the ground beneath my feet was already crumbling. I scanned the table, looking for my spot. For 33 years. My seat had been the same, to the left of my father, facing the window. It was a place of honor, or perhaps a place of surveillance, depending on the day. I walked toward it, and then I stopped. The blood drained from my face, leaving me cold and lightheaded. There was no chair. At the spot where I always sat, the space was empty of furniture, the table setting, the placemat, the silverware, the crystal goblet was gone. The tablecloth was smooth and unbroken, in the physical space where my chair should have been. There sat a large, decorative ceramic pot containing a tall, leafy fiddle leaf fig plant. It wasn't that they had squeezed in an extra guest and moved me. It wasn't that the table was too crowded. They had removed my place entirely. They had filled the void with vegetation. I stood there, clutching the pie box, my brain refusing to process the visual data. It was a glitch, a mistake. Maybe the chair was broken. Maybe the caterers had miscounted. "Ah, Hazel, you are here." My mother's voice cut through the room like a silver knife. The conversation in the room died instantly. It was as if someone had cut the power. 20 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. Marjorie Hall stood at the head of the table. She was wearing a dress the color of steel, her hair coiffed into an indestructible helmet of blonde. She was smiling, but it was the smile of a shark sensing movement in the water. "Mom," I said. My voice sounded small, thin. I hated it. I cleared my throat and tried again, projecting the authority I used in boardrooms. "Mom, where is my seat?" Marjorie tilted her head. She gestured vaguely to the plant. "We had to simplify, darling," she said. Her tone was light, airy, as if she were discussing the weather. The table was getting so crowded, and we felt that the dynamic needed adjustment. "Adjustment," I repeated. My father, Dale Hall, stepped forward from the sideboard. He was holding a carving knife, his knuckles white against the handle. He looked tired. The lines around his mouth were deeper than I remembered. Etched with a grim bitterness, he looked at me, and there was no love in his face. There was only a cold, flat calculation. "No seat for disappointments," he said. He said it loudly, clearly. He projected his voice so that it reached the back corners of the room, ensuring that even the distant uncle and the catering staff heard it. No seat for disappointments. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, from the corner of the room, someone laughed, a short, nervous chuckle. A guest who assumed this must be a joke, a bit of dry family humor they didn't quite understand. But nobody else laughed. I stood there, the pie box growing heavier by the second. My heart was pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. A frantic bird trying to escape. I looked at the plant. I looked at the smooth tablecloth where my name card should have been. This was not a prank. I looked at Kerrigan's slate. She was standing near the fireplace, sipping sparkling water. She was watching me with the clinical detachment of a scientist observing a lab rat. She didn't look surprised. She looked satisfied, and suddenly, I understood. This wasn't just about me. This wasn't a private punishment for some perceived slight. This was a public execution. My parents had invited these people, Kerrigan, the wealthy investors, the influential relatives, to witness this. They were branding me. They were publicly declaring that I was out. I was the disappointment. But why? I had a job. I paid my bills. I called them every Sunday. I remembered birthdays. I was a good daughter. I was a boringly, painfully good daughter. I took a step forward. I did not scream. I did not cry. I remembered the rule: no public displays of emotion. "What exactly did I do?" I asked. I kept my voice level. I locked eyes with my mother. Marjorie sighed, a dramatic exhalation that suggested I was exhausting her patience. She smoothed the front of her steel-colored dress. "It is not about one thing, Hazel," she said. "It is your tone, your distance. You drift through this family as if you are better than us. You are not grateful for the opportunities we have provided. We simply decided that if you cannot be present in spirit, you do not need to be present in body." Vague sins, tone, distance, gratitude, these were not crimes. These were feelings. These were subjective interpretations of my personality. I was quiet. I was introverted. I thought before I spoke. In the Hall family, silence was interpreted as judgment, and independence was interpreted as treason. "I am grateful," I said, realizing how pathetic I sounded even as the words left my mouth. "I drove an hour to be here. I brought a pie." My father snorted. "A pie," he mocked. We have a catered dessert tower. Hazel, we do not need your pie. He gestured to the sideboard, where a tiered stand of elaborate pastries sat. They looked perfect in plastic. I looked around the room, searching for an ally, searching for anyone who would say, "This is insane. This is cruel. You cannot take away her chair." I looked at Lydia. My cousin was staring at her shoes, her face pale, but as I watched, she gave a microscopic shake of her head. "Don't," she was saying. "Don't fight. Not here." I looked at Ethan, my brother, the boy I had protected from bullies on the playground, the boy I had helped with his homework for 12 years. He was looking at the ceiling. His jaw was clenched so tight a muscle jumped in his cheek. He knew. He had known this was going to happen, and he had said nothing. The betrayal hit me harder than the missing chair. I looked back at my parents. They were waiting. They were waiting for me to break. They wanted me to cry. They wanted me to cause a scene so they could point and say, "See? See how unstable she is?" We had no choice. If I screamed, I proved them right. If I begged, I gave them power. I tightened my grip on the pie box. The cardboard dug into my fingers. I am a senior lead consultant, I thought. I solve complex data problems. I find patterns in chaos. The pattern here was clear. They were trying to force a reaction. I would not give it to them. I took a deep breath. I straightened my spine. I lifted my chin just a fraction of an inch. "I understand," I said. My mother blinked. This was not the line she had scripted for me. "You understand?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. "I understand that you have made a decision," I said. "Thank you for the invitation. The house looks beautiful. Mom," I turned to my father. "Happy Thanksgiving. Dad." I did not wait for a response. I turned on my heel, clutching my pie, and walked back toward the hallway. The silence behind me was deafening. I could feel their eyes boring into my back. I could feel the confusion of the guests. I was walking out on Thanksgiving. I was breaking the ultimate etiquette, but I kept walking. Left foot, right foot, past the portraits of the ancestors, past the coat-check girl, who looked up with wide, startled eyes. "Leaving already?" she chirped. "Yes," I said. "I forgot something." I pushed open the heavy front door and stepped out into the cold November air. The wind hit my face, biting and sharp. It felt good. It felt real. I walked to my car, my steps steady on the gravel. I did not run. I opened the back door and placed the pie gently on the seat. Then I got into the driver's seat and closed the door. Only then did I let go. My hands started to shake, violent, uncontrollable tremors. I gripped the steering wheel, gasping for air. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a hydraulic press. I had just been disowned, publicly, over a dinner table I wasn't even allowed to sit at. No seat for disappointments. The words echoed in the small space of the car. I looked at the house. The windows were glowing with warm, golden light. Inside, they were probably sitting down now. Someone was unfolding a napkin. Someone was pouring wine. They were eating the turkey. They were laughing. They had erased me. And the party was continuing without a pause. Why? The question clawed at me. My mother's reasons were nonsense. Tone and distance were not reasons to humiliate your daughter in front of investors. There was something else. The extra cars, Kerrigan's slate, the branding. This wasn't emotional. It was strategic. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone. My fingers were trembling so badly I mistyped the passcode twice. I opened my messages and found Lydia's name. "Tell me the real reason." I typed. I stared at the screen, watching the 3 dots appear almost instantly. Lydia had her phone under the table. She was waiting for this. "Call me," she replied. "Now." I stared at the word now. I didn't call. I couldn't. My voice would crack. I wasn't ready to hear the truth yet. I needed to be away from this house. I needed distance. I started the engine. I backed out of the spot on the grass, careful not to spin my tires. I drove down the long driveway, past the perfectly raked leaves, past the stone walls, I didn't cry until I hit the highway, and even then, it wasn't a sob. It was a single, hot tear that tracked down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. The drive back to Westmere was a blur. I didn't listen to the radio. I just drove. The image of that potted plant burned into my retinas. A fiddle leaf fig. They had replaced me with a fiddle leaf fig. When I finally unlocked the door to my apartment, the silence that greeted me was different. It wasn't the hostile silence of Cedar Hollow Lane. It was the silence of safety. I dropped my keys on the counter. I put the pie in the fridge. I didn't want to look at it. I walked into my living room and sat down on my sofa. My gray, comfortable, secondhand sofa. On the bookshelf opposite me, there were photos, framed pictures of my life. I looked at the one from my college graduation. My parents were there, standing on either side of me. But if you looked closely, you could see the gap. They were leaning away from me, just slightly, as if they didn't want to be touched. I looked at the photo from Ethan's wedding. I was a bridesmaid. I was standing at the far edge of the group, half obscured by a groomsman. I looked at the photo from last Christmas. I was seated on the floor. While everyone else was on the couch, I had always been on the edge. I had always been fighting to get to the center. I had spent my entire adult life auditioning for the role of daughter. I had learned my lines. I had worn the costumes. I had danced and spun and twisted myself into knots, hoping for a round of applause that never came. I looked at the empty space in the room where I lived alone. I was 33, I was successful, I was strong, and I was done. I reached for a tissue and wiped my face. The shaking had stopped. A cold, hard clarity was settling in my chest, replacing the panic. They wanted a reaction? They wanted a decision? Okay, I picked up the photo of my college graduation. I looked at my parents smiling, distant faces, one last time. Then I placed the frame face down on the shelf. No seat for disappointments, I whispered to the empty room. My voice was steady. I was not going to cry anymore. I was not going to beg for a chair. If they didn't want me at their table, I would build my own. And the first step was finding out exactly why they had thrown me out of theirs. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was Lydia again. Hazel, please answer. You need to know. I picked up the phone. I took a breath. I stopped auditioning for love in that moment. I started preparing for war. Juniper and Finch was the kind of place that existed for people who could not go home. It was tucked into a narrow alleyway in the arts district of Westmere, open until 3 a.m, smelling perpetually of burnt sugar and old books. The lighting was dim, amber-colored, and forgiving. I sat in a booth at the back, nursing a black coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. My phone sat on the scarred wooden table like a detonator. When the bell above the door chimed, I looked up. Lydia walked in. She looked nothing like the polished, compliant niece she had been at Thanksgiving dinner 4 hours ago. She had changed out of her dress into oversized sweatpants and a denim jacket. Her face was scrubbed clean of makeup, revealing the dark circles she usually concealed with expensive concealer. She slid into the booth opposite me and didn't say hello. She just signaled the waitress for a water and looked at me with eyes that were wide and terrified. "You left the pie," Lydia said. "In the car. I saw it when I drove past the parking lot." "I did not think they deserved dessert," I said. My voice was raspy. I took a sip of the cold coffee just to wet my throat. "Talk to me." "Lydia, what is happening?" Lydia looked around the empty cafe, checking for eavesdroppers. It was a reflex I recognized. In our family, information was currency, and theft was common. "It is the Ashford Creek Civic Trust," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I frowned. The name sounded familiar, but vague. The Revitalization Project? Dad has been on that board for 5 years. It is a volunteer position. "It was a volunteer position," Lydia corrected, "until the funding structure changed 6 months ago. Hazel, listen to me. The family is not just having a bad year. They are spiraling. They are bleeding money. And they are bleeding reputation." She leaned in, her hands gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles turned white. Dale pushed for a massive investment in a riverside development project, she continued. He convinced the board to bypass standard bidding processes because he claimed he had a developer who could do it faster and cheaper. He staked his entire reputation on it. He told everyone at the club, everyone at church, that this was his legacy. And, I asked, the data analyst in me was waking up, overriding the hurt daughter. I needed facts. And the developer vanished, Lydia said flatly, with a significant portion of the initial outlay, but that is not the worst part. The worst part is that the trust is facing a complaint from the State Oversight Committee for mismanagement of funds, and your father is the face of the board. I sat back. The leather of the booth creaking. My father. The man who checked restaurant bills for errors of 50 cents. The man who lectured me on fiscal responsibility because I bought a coffee maker he deemed too expensive. So he is in trouble, I said. Legal trouble. Reputational ruin, Lydia said. Which, for Dale and Marjorie, is worse than jail. If this complaint goes public, if it becomes a scandal, they lose their standing. They lose the country club. They lose the board seats. They lose the ability to look down on people. What does this have to do with my chair? I asked. If they are in trouble, why humiliate me? Why drive me away? Lydia looked at me with a pity that made my stomach turn. They did not drive you away. Hazel, she said. They set a stage. Look at who was there tonight. Kerrigan Slate. I saw her, I said. The family friend. Kerrigan is a crisis management consultant, Lydia said. But she is also quietly consulting for the trust board. She is trying to salvage the situation before it hits the papers. And the other guests? The ones you did not recognize? 2 of them are major donors to the trust. The others were gossips from the club. I felt a cold chill slide down my spine. It was an audience. It was a demonstration, Lydia said. They needed to show that they are still in control, that they are still the halls of Cedar Hollow Lane, but they also needed to create a narrative about you. About me? Think about what Marjorie said, Lydia urged. She talked about your tone, your distance. She made you sound difficult, unstable, ungrateful. She called me a disappointment, I said. Exactly, Lydia said. If you are the disappointment, then you are the problem. And if you are the problem, then anything you say later can be dismissed as the rantings of an estranged, bitter daughter. I shook my head, trying to make the pieces fit. I do not understand. If they need help, why alienate me? I have money. I could have helped with legal fees. I am good at solving problems. Lydia reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Her skin was cold. They do not want your money. Hazel, she said. They want your name. My phone buzzed on the table, vibrating against the wood. I looked down. Ethan Hall. It was the 5th time he had called in the last hour. Answer it, Lydia said. He knows more than I do. I am just the cousin who listens at doors. Ethan is in the room. I stared at the screen until it went dark. I was not ready to speak to him, not yet. Go home, Lydia, I said, pulling my hand away. Thank you for telling me. Hazel, she said, her voice urgent. Be careful. They are desperate. People like your parents. They do not break when they hit a wall. They just throw someone else at it to cushion the impact. I watched her leave, her oversized coat swallowing her frame. I sat in the cafe for another hour, staring at the dregs of my coffee, trying to calculate the probability that my entire life had been a lie. I went home. I slept for 3 hours. A fitful, shallow sleep filled with dreams of drowning in a room full of people who were politely watching me sink. When I woke up, the sun was gray and weak. I checked my phone. 7 missed calls from Ethan, no voicemail. Ethan never left voicemails. He was afraid of leaving a record. It was a habit he had picked up from our father. I pressed the callback button. He answered on the first ring. Hazel? His voice sounded thick, like he had been crying or drinking, or both. I am coming over, I said. Hazel, wait, I am coming over. Ethan, I said, open the door, or I will use the emergency key you gave me 3 years ago. I hung up. Ethan lived in a luxury apartment complex in the city, a place with a doorman and a marble lobby that my parents approved of. He was 29, an architect at a firm my father had connections with. He was the golden child, the one who got the seat at the table. When he opened the door, he looked like a wreck. He was wearing the same dress shirt from Thanksgiving, unbuttoned at the collar, wrinkled and stained. His eyes were bloodshot. He stepped back to let me in. The apartment was pristine, modern, and cold. It looked like a showroom, not a home. I have coffee, he said, gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen. I do not want coffee, I said. I stood in the center of his living room, keeping my coat on. I needed the armor. I want to know why you let them take my chair. Ethan flinched. He walked over to the window and looked out at the skyline. I did not know they were going to do that. You knew something, I said. You would not look at me. I knew they were going to ask you something, he said. I knew they were planning a pitch, but I didn't know they would do it like that. I didn't know they would humiliate you first. Humiliate me first, I repeated. So the humiliation was the appetizer. What was the main course? Ethan? He turned around. He looked young, terrified, and weak. I felt a surge of anger, but beneath it, a deep, aching sadness. He was a victim of them too, but he was a victim who had learned to survive by feeding others to the beast. They want you to sign on with the trust, he said. I am a data analyst, I said. I know nothing about civic revitalization or construction contracts. Not for construction, Ethan said. For compliance. They want to create a temporary position, an external consultant role, senior compliance advisor. They want you to take it. I laughed. It was a sharp, barking sound that surprised us both. They want to hire me? After telling me I'm a disappointment? Their strategy is flawed. It is not about the work, Hazel, Ethan shouted. He ran a hand through his hair. It is about your reputation. You are perfect. You are the senior lead at North Bank. You are boringly ethical. You have never even had a parking ticket. If you sign on as a consultant, it signals to the investigators and the donors that everything is under control. It says, look, our brilliant, straight-laced daughter is looking at the books, and she says it is fine. But the books are not fine, I said. Lydia told me, the money is gone. They just need time, Ethan pleaded. Dad says he can move some assets. He can cover the gap. But he needs the investigation to pause. He needs the donors to stop asking questions. If you sign on, it buys him credibility. It buys him 3 months. And what happens in 3 months? I asked. When the money is still missing? Who takes the fall then? Ethan went silent. The silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Me, I said. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. I would be the compliance advisor. I would be the one who signed off on the books. If the money is still missing, it looks like I missed it, or worse, that I covered it up. They wouldn't let you go to jail, Ethan said quickly, too quickly. Dad has lawyers. It would just be a professional hit. You would take a censure, maybe a fine, but the family would be safe. Dad's legacy would be safe. My career, I said, my voice trembling with rage. I have worked 10 years to build my name. I just got promoted, and you want me to burn it to save Dad's country club membership? It is not just the club, Ethan yelled. It is everything, Hazel. If he goes down, he takes the house, the accounts, everything. Mom is falling apart. She is terrified. So she removed my chair, I said. She humiliated me in front of Kerrigan's slate. That was the setup, Ethan admitted, his voice dropping. They had to establish that you were difficult. In case you said no, if you refused to help, they have already planted the seeds. Hazel is resentful. Hazel is unstable. Hazel hates the family. So if you speak out against them, nobody believes you. You just sound like a vindictive daughter. I stared at him. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was a masterclass in manipulation. They had broken my legs so they could blame me for not being able to walk, and then asked me to carry them. And you, I said softly, you knew this. And you let me drive there. You let me walk into that room with a pie. I was scared, Ethan whispered. I am sorry. Hazel, I was scared. You are a coward, I said. I turned and walked out. I did not slam the door. I closed it gently, with a click that sounded like the end of the world. I drove back to my apartment in a daze. My brain was racing, replaying every interaction I had ever had with my parents, every criticism, every time they had dismissed my achievements. It had all been training. They had been grooming me for this moment, training me to crave their approval so desperately that I would jump into a fire just to hear them say "good job" when I got to my door. I saw the white envelope. It had been slid underneath the door, resting on the welcome mat inside my apartment. It was thick, creamy paper, expensive stationery. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. The shock had burned off, leaving only a cold, hard resolve. I opened it. There was a single sheet of paper, typed. My mother's handwriting was nowhere to be seen, but her voice was in every word. Hazel, we regret that Thanksgiving became so emotionally charged. We know you have been under a lot of stress lately, and perhaps we were not sensitive enough to your current state of mind. We want to restore family harmony. It is the most important thing to us. Kerrigan Slate has kindly offered to mediate a conversation. She believes there is a path forward where everyone feels heard and valued. She is waiting for you at her office at 2 o'clock today. Please go. For us, love, Mom and Dad. Restoring family harmony. Your current state of mind. They were doing it in writing now, creating a paper trail. If I didn't go, I was the unreasonable one. I was the one rejecting the olive branch. I looked at the clock. It was 11 in the morning. I walked into my kitchen and poured the rest of the cold coffee down the sink. I was not going to that meeting alone. I picked up my phone and called Lydia. I need a favor, I said when she answered. Anything, she said. I have a meeting with Kerrigan Slate at 2. I want you to come with me. There was a pause on the line. Hazel. Kerrigan scares me. She is like a shark in a blazer. I know, I said. That is why I need a witness. I need someone who remembers the truth. You said they silenced you once. When? Lydia hesitated. When I was 20. I found out Uncle Dale was using my college fund, the trust Grandpa left for me, to cover a bad investment in a startup. I tried to ask about it. Marjorie took me aside and told me that if I made a fuss, I would be destroying the family. She told everyone I was having a mental breakdown because of exam stress. She sent me to a wellness retreat for a month. By the time I came back, the money was restructured, and I was the crazy niece. I did not know that, I said. Nobody knows, Lydia said. That is how they work. Come with me, I said. Let's break the pattern. Okay, Lydia said. I will be there. Slate Advisory Partners was located in a glass tower downtown, the kind of building that required a security badge just to use the elevator. The lobby was all polished marble and abstract art that looked like violence frozen in metal. Lydia met me outside. She was dressed in a suit, her hair pulled back. She looked terrified, but she was standing tall. Ready? I asked. No, she said. Let's go. We rode the elevator in silence. When the doors opened on the 40th floor, a receptionist with a smile like a laser beam greeted us. Ms. Hall, she said. Ms. Slate is expecting you. I see you brought a guest. This is my associate, I said, using the corporate language they understood. She is taking notes for me. The receptionist hesitated, then nodded. Right this way. Kerrigan Slate's office was a corner suite with a view of the entire city. It was designed to make you feel small. Kerrigan sat behind a desk that looked like a slab of ice. She did not stand up when we entered. Hazel, she said. Her voice was smooth, cultivated. And Lydia, I didn't realize this was a group session. Lydia is here for support, I said. Taking the seat opposite the desk without waiting to be asked, Lydia sat next to me, opening a notebook. Very well, Kerrigan said. She clasped her hands on the desk. Let's be frank. Hazel, yesterday was unfortunate. Your parents are deeply concerned about you. They removed my chair, I said. They set a boundary, Kerrigan corrected. They feel you have been drifting, disconnected, but they want to bring you back into the fold. They want you to have a seat at the table, Hazel, a permanent one. And what is the price of admission? I asked. Kerrigan smiled. It was not a nice smile. It is not a price. It is a contribution. Your father is dealing with a complex regulatory misunderstanding at the trust. It is entirely bureaucratic, but it looks messy to the uneducated eye. He needs someone with your analytical pedigree to step in and provide some structural oversight. She slid a folder across the desk. This is a draft agreement, she said. It appoints you as a voluntary strategic advisor to the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. It is a temporary role, very prestigious. It would look excellent on your resume. I opened the folder. The document was thick. I started to read. The language was dense, but I was used to reading contracts. I scanned the clauses, agrees to provide independent oversight and acknowledges full access to financial records. It also assumes responsibility for verifying the accuracy of past reporting. And then, buried on page 4, paragraph 3. The advisor shall have final authority over all external communications regarding the financial status of the project and assumes liability for the accuracy of such communications. I looked up. It says here I assume liability for communications decisions, I said. Standard boilerplate. Kerrigan waved a hand. It just means you are the point person. It empowers you. It means if the trust lied to the donors, and I sign off on a report saying everything is fine. I am the one who lied, I said. Hazel, you are being paranoid, Kerrigan said, her voice hardening. Your parents are trying to give you a position of authority. They are trying to show they trust you. If you help them through this little bump, everything goes back to normal. You get your seat back, you get the family back, no more practiced child. You become the savior. And if I do not sign? I asked. Kerrigan leaned back. The mask slipped. Just a fraction. Then the narrative stands, she said. You are the unstable daughter who made a scene at Thanksgiving. You are the one who abandoned her family in a time of crisis. And when the investigation proceeds, because it will, and your father faces scrutiny, it will be very easy for the family to say that the mismanagement happened because they were distracted, because they were dealing with a family tragedy. I felt the blood drain from my face. It was perfect. It was diabolical. The missing chair wasn't a punishment. It was a lever. They had created a void so that I would be desperate enough to fill it with my own body. They wanted me to be the human shield. I looked at the document again. It was a trap, a bear trap painted gold. I looked at Lydia. She was writing furiously in her notebook, documenting every word. I closed the folder. No, I said. Kerrigan blinked. Excuse me? No, I said, louder this time. I will not sign this. I will not be your shield. And I will not be the compliance officer for a crime I did not commit. Hazel, Kerrigan said, her voice dropping to a warning growl. Think very carefully about what you are walking away from. You are walking away from your inheritance, your reputation, your family. I am walking away from a burning building, I said. I want a copy of this, I said, tapping the folder. That is a confidential draft, Kerrigan said, reaching for it. You cannot take it. I want a copy, I repeated. No, Kerrigan said. She placed her hand on the folder and pulled it toward her. I did not fight her for it. I did not scream. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Kerrigan asked sharply. Documenting, I said. I stood up. I leaned over the desk. Before Kerrigan could react, I snapped a photo of the open page, the page with the liability clause. The shutter sound was loud in the quiet office. Kerrigan stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. You cannot do that. That is privileged information. It is a draft offered to me, I said. I am reviewing it, and now I have a record of what you asked me to sign. I looked at Kerrigan. Her composure was cracking. Her eyes darted to the door, then back to me. She was calculating the risk. She realized, in that moment, that I was not the scared daughter anymore. I was a variable she could not control. "You are making a mistake," she hissed. "A massive, life-ruining mistake." "We are leaving," I said to Lydia. Lydia stood up, closing her notebook with a snap. She looked at Kerrigan. "I got it all," Lydia said quietly. "Every word." We walked out. We walked past the receptionist, who looked confused by our speed. We walked into the elevator. When the doors closed, my legs almost gave out. I leaned against the metal wall, breathing hard. "You took the photo," Lydia said, her eyes wide. "I cannot believe you took the photo." "It is leverage," I said. "It proves they tried to make me liable. If they try to blame me later, I have proof that the plan existed." "They are going to come for you," Lydia said. "Hard." "Let them come," I said, but my hands were shaking again. We walked out of the building into the afternoon sun. The city looked the same, but it felt different. The buildings looked like jagged teeth. The traffic sounded like a roar. "I need to go home," I said. "I need to hide this photo. I need to back it up on 3 different servers." "I will drive you," Lydia said. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off. I had backed up the photo. I had emailed a copy to a secure account. I had sent a copy to Lydia. I was watching the street below, half expecting to see my father's car, or a police car, or Kerrigan's slate in a black van. My phone buzzed. It was a text message. From a number I did not recognize. I opened it. "You don't want to be the reason your father loses everything." I stared at the screen. The glow illuminated the dark room. It was not a plea. It was not a warning. It was a threat. They were not stopping. They were escalating. I put the phone down on the table. I thought about the chair, the empty space, the plant. They had removed my seat to make me feel small, to make me feel like I was nothing without them. But they had made a miscalculation. By taking away my seat, they had forced me to stand up. And now that I was standing, I could see everything. I picked up the phone again. I did not reply. I took a screenshot of the text. I added it to the file. "I am not the reason," I whispered to the empty room. "I am just the witness." And the witness was about to start testifying. I needed a lawyer. But more than that, I needed someone who wouldn't be charmed by my parents. Mara Keene was the only person I knew who fit that description. We had met in a philosophy seminar our sophomore year, and while I had spent the last decade building quiet, structured data sets, Mara had been in courtrooms, dismantling arguments with a terrifying precision. She was sharp, unsentimental, and immune to the specific frequency of guilt my family broadcasted. I met her at her office in downtown Westmere. It was small, cluttered with case files, and smelled of stale coffee, a stark contrast to the glacial perfection of Kerrigan's slate suite. I laid it all out on her desk, the screenshot of the text message, the photo of the document clause I had snapped at Slate Advisory, the notes Lydia had taken. Mara read through them in silence. She tapped a pen against her chin, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. "This is not a job offer, Hazel," she said finally. "This is a grenade with the pin already pulled." "I knew it," I said, exhaling a breath I felt like I'd been holding since Thanksgiving. "But hearing you say it makes it real." "Look at the phrasing here," Mara said, circling a paragraph on the photo printout. "Full retroactive oversight of communication strategies. Do you know what that means in legal speak? It means if they lied to a donor 3 months ago, and you sign this today, you are retroactively adopting that lie. You become the author of their fraud." "Fraud," I repeated. The word felt heavy and ugly in the room. "If money is missing and they are hiding it, that is fraud," Mara said bluntly, "and this document is designed to make you the face of it. They are not asking you to fix the problem. They are asking you to be the patsy, the responsible adult who comes in, looks at the books, and says, "Oops, my bad." Then they fire you, claim they were misled by their consultant, and walk away with their hands clean. I felt sick. They are my parents. Mara, how could they do that? Mara looked at me with a softness that was rare for her. People do desperate things when they are cornered. Hazel, especially people who care more about their image than their reality. They are not seeing you as a daughter right now. They are seeing you as an asset, an expendable asset. She pushed the papers back toward me. "Do not sign anything," she said. "Do not agree to any meetings without a witness, and start gathering everything you have, emails, texts, voicemails, anything that shows a pattern of pressure. If they try to drag you into this, you need to be able to prove you were never part of it." I went home and started digging. It was a painful archaeology. I scrolled back through years of digital history, looking for the cracks I had ignored. I found an email from Marjorie from 2 years ago. "Hazel, darling, your father needs you to write a letter to the club board explaining why our dues were late. Use your business letterhead. It looks more official coming from a professional." I found texts from Ethan. "Just agree with them, H. It's easier. They're stressing about money again." I found the photos from Thanksgiving. I zoomed in on the dining room table. There it was. The empty space. The plant. The deliberate gap where I should have been. It wasn't just a missing chair. It was a stage direction. Then, a notification popped up on my laptop. It was a forwarded email chain from my Aunt Cynthia. She had sent it to me without comment. Just a subject line that read, "Thought you should see this." It was an email from my mother to the extended family list. Aunts, uncles, cousins. "We are so worried about Hazel." Marjorie had written, "She has been struggling financially for months. We offered her a position with the trust to help her get back on her feet. But her pride is getting in the way. She is lashing out at us because she is embarrassed. Please be gentle with her." I stared at the screen, my vision blurring. Financially struggling. I made 6 figures. I had a fully funded retirement account. I had 0 debt. I had just been promoted. But the lie was perfect. It explained everything to the relatives. It explained why I would be desperate enough to take a sketchy consulting gig. It explained my anger. I wasn't a victim of abuse. I was just a broke, prideful millennial throwing a tantrum because I wouldn't accept charity. They were rewriting my reality. I closed the laptop. I needed to see Ethan. I didn't call him. I texted him a location. Stonebridge Library. The reference section. 1 hour. It was neutral ground. Quiet. Public. A place where raising your voice was impossible. Ethan was waiting for me between the encyclopedias and the biographies. He looked worse than he had the day before. He was wearing a hoodie, hood up, trying to disappear. "You saw the email," he said. It wasn't a question. "I saw the lie," I corrected. "I am not struggling. Ethan, I just got a promotion." "Why are they telling people I am broke?" "Because it makes the story work," Ethan whispered. "If you are successful, you have no reason to help them cover up a mess. If you are desperate, you do. It provides a motive for why you'd sign the papers." "What did Dad do?" I asked. I kept my voice low, barely a breath. "What exactly did he do?" Ethan looked around. The library was nearly empty, just a few students studying at the far tables. "There was a grant," Ethan said, "for a youth center. $2 million. It came in 6 months ago." "Okay," I said. "Where is it?" "Dad moved it," Ethan said. "He had a friend, some guy he met at a golf tournament, who pitched him a guaranteed return investment, a tech startup in the city. Dad thought if he invested the grant money for 3 months, he could double it, put the original amount back into the trust account, and keep the profit for the family. He thought he was being a genius. He gambled with nonprofit funds," I said. The horror was cold and precise. "That is embezzlement, Ethan." "He called it a temporary liquidity transfer," Ethan said, quoting our father's pompous vocabulary. "But the startup folded. In 2 months, the money is gone. All of it. $2 million, I whispered. "And the oversight committee is asking for the quarterly audit," Ethan said. That is why they need you. They need a compliance advisor to come in and file an extension, to say the records are messy but safe, to buy time so Dad can, I don't know, sell the house? Borrow from a loan shark? He thinks he can fix it if he just has time. And Mom? I asked. Does she know? Ethan let out a bitter laugh. No, she orchestrated the cover-up. Dad fell apart when the money vanished. He was ready to confess. Mom slapped him, literally. She told him he was not going to ruin her life. She came up with the plan to bring you in. She said you were malleable. She said you craved approval so much you'd sign anything if they framed it as helping the family. I leaned against the metal shelf. The smell of old paper surrounded me, malleable. That was what they thought of me. Soft, formless, something to be shaped into a shield. I am not malleable, I said. I know, Ethan said. I told them. I said, Hazel isn't stupid. But they don't believe you have it in you to say no. Not really. They think you are still the little girl waiting for a gold star. I am torn, Ethan, I admitted. The anger was there, hot and sharp, but underneath it was a terrible, aching grief. I could end this. I could go to the police. I could burn it all down. But they are Mom and Dad, Ethan finished. And you don't want to be the one holding the match. I don't want to be the reason they go to prison, I said. Even if they deserve it. If you don't sign, Ethan said, they will blame you anyway. They will say you knew and refused to stop it. They will drag you down with them. I left the library feeling heavier than I had ever felt in my life. I drove aimlessly for a while, ending up in the parking lot of a grocery store. I sat there, watching people load bags into their cars. Normal people. People whose parents probably didn't embezzle millions and try to frame them for it. My phone rang. It was Lydia. I found something else, she said. Her voice was tight. I don't think I can handle anything else. Lydia, I said. You need to hear this, she said. I was looking through the old family trust documents, the ones my lawyer pulled when I had my own issues. I found a transaction record from 12 years ago, from Grandma's estate. Grandma left everything to Dad, I said. That was the will. She left a specific bequest to you, Lydia said. $50,000. For Hazel's future. It was supposed to go into a separate account when you turned 21. I sat up straight. I never saw that money. Dad told me Grandma didn't leave any individual gifts. Marjorie moved it, Lydia said. There is a transfer authorization, signed by Marjorie Hall. As executor proxy, it went into the Hall Family Emergency Fund, which, as far as I can tell, was just their personal checking account. She stole from me, I said. She took it, Lydia corrected, and she never told you, because she figured you wouldn't ask, because you were the good one, the one who didn't cause trouble. The grief inside me hardened into something like stone. $50,000. That was the down payment on my apartment. That was my student loans. That was years of working overtime, eating ramen, scrimping to build a life, while they sat on my grandmother's gift and spent it on, what, country club dues? A new car? I hung up. I dialed my mother's number. She answered on the second ring. Hazel, she said. Her voice was cool, collected. Have you come to your senses? Kerrigan is still willing to meet. Did you take Grandma's money? I asked. There was a pause, a beat of silence. What are you talking about? She asked. But the tone wasn't confusion, it was caution. The $50,000 she left me, I said. Lydia found the transfer. Did you take it? I waited for the denial. I waited for the gaslighting. I waited for her to say Lydia was lying, or I was crazy. We used it, Marjorie said. Her voice was ice calm. No apology, no hesitation. You used it, I repeated. We had expenses that year, she said. The roof needed repairs. Your father's bonus was smaller than expected. We used it for the family. You were in college. You didn't need it then. You would have just wasted it on travels or clothes. We put it to better use. It was mine, I said. It was family money, she snapped. And you are part of the family. Therefore, it benefited you. Stop being so petty. Hazel. We are talking about saving your father's reputation, and you are digging up ancient history about a few dollars. A few dollars. Theft. Betrayal. You would have wasted it. That was the line that did it. The casual certainty that I was incompetent, that I couldn't be trusted with my own inheritance, that my needs, my future, were secondary to their immediate comfort. I am not signing the papers, Mom, I said. Hazel, don't be. I am not signing, I said. And I am not financially struggling. Stop telling people I am broke. We are controlling the narrative, she said. If you don't help us, we have to explain your behavior somehow. My behavior is a response to your actions, I said. You are being incredibly selfish, she said. After everything we have done for you. I hung up. I sat in the car, shaking, not from fear this time, from rage. She hadn't even denied it. She felt entitled to it. She felt entitled to my money, my reputation, my name, my life. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a resource. I needed to draw a line, a public line. I opened my email app on my phone. I drafted a new message. I added the entire family list, the aunts, the cousins, the distant uncles. I added my parents. I added Ethan. Subject: clarification. Dear family, it has come to my attention that there is some confusion regarding my current circumstances. I want to clarify a few points. 1. I am not financially struggling. I am securely employed and have recently been promoted. I am not in need of assistance. 2. I have not accepted, nor will I accept, any consulting role with the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. Any statement suggesting I am involved in their compliance or financial oversight is false. 3. I love this family, but I will not sign legal documents to resolve issues I did not create. I will not be used to validate decisions I was not part of. I ask that my name not be used in any further discussions regarding the trust. Sincerely, Hazel. I read it over. It was polite. It was factual. It was devastating. It contradicted their entire narrative. It stripped away the desperate daughter story and replaced it with a competent professional setting boundaries story. I hit send. The response was immediate. My phone lit up. A text from Aunt Cynthia. Oh, Hazel, was this necessary? This feels very dramatic. A text from an uncle. Family matters should be kept private. Disappointed. A text from my mother. You have just humiliated us. Again, you are dead to me. But then, a text from a cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Good for you. Hazel, we all knew something was weird. And a text from Lydia. Brave. I realized then that the family system was a machine. It relied on everyone playing their part. The parents ruled. The children obeyed. The secrets were kept. By sending that email, I had thrown a wrench into the gears. Some people were angry because the machine was making noise. Others were secretly relieved because they had always hated the machine. But I wasn't done. I had drawn a line with the family. Now I needed to draw a line with the law. I drove back to my apartment. I opened my laptop and searched for the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. I found the list of board members. I found the contact information for the External Oversight Committee. There was a name listed as the lead investigator for the current compliance review. Ronan Pike. I hesitated. If I called him, I was crossing the Rubicon. I was contacting the enemy. But my parents had already proven they would throw me to the wolves. They had stolen from me. They were trying to frame me. I wasn't calling to turn them in. I wasn't calling to confess their crimes. I couldn't do that. Not yet. I was calling to protect myself, to ensure that when the inevitable crash happened, my name wasn't on the wreckage. I dialed the number. Ronan Pike, a gruff voice answered. Mr. Pike, I said. My name is Hazel Hall. I believe you are investigating the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. I am, he said. His tone sharpened. Are you related to Dale Hall? I am his daughter, I said. Silence on the line. He was waiting. "I am calling to make a statement," I said. "I want it on the record that I have no professional relationship with the trust. I have never been a consultant. I have never reviewed their books, and I have never authorized anyone to use my name on compliance documents." "Interesting," Pike said, "because I have a memo here dated yesterday that lists you as the incoming senior compliance advisor." My heart stopped. They had already done it. They had already used my name. "That memo is false," I said. "I did not sign it. I refused it." "Can you prove that?" Pike asked. "I can," I said. "When can we meet?" "Tomorrow morning," Pike said. 9 o'clock? My office? "I will be there," I said. I hung up. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. I was alone. My mother said I was dead to her. My father was probably frantic. My relatives thought I was dramatic. But for the first time in 33 years, I wasn't waiting for someone to give me a seat. I was standing on my own 2 feet, and I was ready to testify. Ronan Pike's office was not designed to make people feel comfortable. It was a government building in the city center, fluorescent lit, and smelling faintly of industrial cleaner and floor wax. There was no mahogany here, no plush carpets like the ones in Kerrigan's Slate Suite. There was only a metal desk, 2 filing cabinets, and a window that looked out onto a brick wall. I sat in a plastic chair that scraped against the linoleum when I moved. Ronan Pike sat opposite me. He was a man who looked like he had been carved out of granite and then left out in the rain. Weathered, gray, and utterly unmovable. He did not offer me water. He did not ask how my drive was. He simply opened a file folder and looked at me over the rim of his reading glasses. "You said you had proof," he said. His voice was gravel. I reached into my bag and pulled out the manila envelope I had prepared. My hands were steady. I had spent the entire night organizing this, treating it like a data project for a client. I was detached. I was precise. "This is an affidavit from me," I said, sliding the paper across the cool metal desk. "It states clearly that I am not, and have never been, an employee or consultant for the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. It details the date and time I was offered a contract. And the fact that I refused it." Pike picked up the document. He read it slowly. He was a man who trusted paper more than people. "And this," I continued, sliding the second photo across, "is a photograph I took of the contract draft presented to me by Kerrigan Slate. It shows the clause assigning liability for communication decisions to the signatory." Pike looked at the photo. His eyebrows twitched, the only sign of emotion I had seen so far. "Smart," he said. "Most people do not think to document the offer they turn down." "I was not thinking like a daughter," I said. "I was thinking like a liability." Pike leaned back in his chair. The springs squeaked. He studied me for a long moment, assessing whether I was a bitter child trying to hurt her parents or a witness trying to survive them. "Ms. Hall," he said, "you need to understand something. My investigation is not about family squabbles. It is about the misuse of $2 million of community revitalization funds. If your father moved that money, he committed a felony. If your mother helped him hide it, she is an accessory. If you sign anything at all, you become part of the conspiracy." "I know," I said. "That is why I am here. I am not here to give you evidence against them. I am here to separate myself from them." It was a fine line to walk. I did not want to be the one who sent my father to prison. I just wanted to ensure I didn't go with him. Pike tapped his pen on the desk. "You are wise to do so. We received a whistleblower complaint 3 weeks ago. It was anonymous, but detailed. It described the financial transfers perfectly, but it also mentioned a specific strategy the board was discussing." He paused, watching my face. "The complaint said they were looking for a clean skin," Pike said. "A family member with a spotless record who could be positioned as a shield to absorb the regulatory impact. They used that word, shield." I felt the air leave my lungs. I had suspected it. Ethan had hinted at it, but hearing it from a stranger, hearing it described as a premeditated strategy detailed in a whistleblower report, was different. It wasn't just a panic reaction from my parents. It was a plan. A shield, I repeated. My voice sounded hollow in the sterile room. You were not a person to them in those meetings, Pike said, not unkindly. You were a piece of armor. My advice to you, Ms. Hall, document every interaction, save every text, and do not, under any circumstances, let them get you in a room alone again. I walked out of the government building into the bright, cold sunlight. I felt stripped raw, a shield. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted Kevlar. I got into my car and sat there for a long time. Watching the pedestrians walk by, they looked so normal. They were worrying about lunch, or bills, or dates. They weren't worrying about whether their parents had drafted a plan to use them as human shields for a felony. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Voicemail received. Dad. I stared at the screen. My father never called. He had his secretary call, or he had my mother call. If Dale Hall was dialing a number himself, the house was already burning. I pressed play. I needed to hear it. I needed to know the temperature of the fire. Hazel, my father's voice filled the car. He sounded old, tired. The boom was gone from his voice, replaced by a tremulous shake. Hazel, honey, I am sitting here in the study, looking at that photo of us from the lake house. You remember? You were 7. You caught that sunfish. I closed my eyes. I remembered. He had been so proud. It was one of the few times I had felt seen. I miss you, Hazel, he continued. We all do. This whole thing. It has gotten out of hand. I know we pushed you. I know we made mistakes. But we are family. I am asking you, as your father, please call us. We can fix this. We just need to talk. My throat tightened. It was the voice I had wanted to hear for 33 years. Vulnerable, apologetic, a father reaching out to his daughter. I almost reached for the callback button. My thumb hovered over the screen. He sounded so sad. Maybe Pike was wrong. Maybe they weren't monsters. Maybe they were just scared people who needed help. And then, I heard it. It was faint, in the background. But my phone's audio was clear. Say the part about forgiveness, a woman's voice whispered. Tell her you forgive her for the scene. It was Marjorie. She was coaching him. She was standing right there, directing the performance. The vulnerability was scripted. The sunfish memory was a prop. My thumb froze. I forgive you, Hazel, my father said, parroting the line a second later. I forgive you for the scene at Thanksgiving. Just come home. I ended the call. I didn't throw the phone. I didn't scream. I just felt a piece of my heart turn into something hard and gray, like the stone in a riverbed. He didn't miss me. He missed the shield. I saved the voicemail. I emailed it to Mara. I emailed it to my secure file. I drove home in silence. Later that afternoon, Lydia called. She didn't bother with pleasantries. I found out why Kerrigan is involved, she said. Because she is a fixer, I said, putting my groceries away. Because she likes the power. That is part of it, Lydia said. But I did some digging into the Slate Advisory public filings. Kerrigan is bidding on a massive municipal contract next year, the city revitalization project for the downtown sector. Guess who is on the selection committee? The trust board, I realized. Exactly, Lydia said. If the trust goes down for fraud, the board is dissolved, and Kerrigan loses her inside track to a $10 million contract. She isn't helping Dale because she likes him. She is helping him because she needs the trust to look stable until the bid is approved in January. So she needs a signature, I said. She needs a compliance advisor to sign off on the books so the trust looks clean for 2 more months. You are the key to her paycheck. Hazel, Lydia said. That is why she was so aggressive. That is why she threatened you. It is just business. It is always just business with them, I said. 2 days later, the invitation arrived via email. It wasn't a summons to a dungeon. It was an invitation to a casual, post-Thanksgiving cider at Aunt Cynthia's house. Cynthia was one of the few relatives who had been kind to me. She was Switzerland, neutral, anxious, and eager to please everyone. I assumed it would be safe. A small group, leftover pie, no parents. I was wrong. I arrived at Cynthia's modest brick house at 7 in the evening. There were 5 or 6 cars in the driveway. I saw Lydia's car and felt a wave of relief. I walked in, carrying a bottle of wine. The house was warm and smelled of cinnamon and clove. Cynthia hugged me at the door, her body tense. "I am so glad you came. Hazel," she whispered, squeezing me a little too hard. I tried to keep it small. I walked into the living room. Marjorie was sitting in the center of the sofa, holding a glass of mulled cider. She wasn't supposed to be here. Cynthia had promised, but there she was, holding court. She was wearing a soft cashmere sweater, looking approachable and maternal. When she saw me, her face lit up with a performance of delight so convincing it was terrifying. "Hazel!" she cried out. She stood up and crossed the room. Arms open, the room went silent. The other guests, my cousins, a few aunts, watched with bated breath. They were the audience again. Marjorie hugged me. She smelled of expensive soap and aggression. I stood stiffly in her arms, not hugging back. "I am so happy you decided to join us," she said, pulling back but keeping her hands on my shoulders. "We have missed you so much." She turned to the room, keeping me pinned. "Hazel has been under so much pressure at work," Marjorie announced to the room. "We have been so worried about her stress levels. Sometimes we just lash out at the ones we love, don't we?" She was rewriting history in real time. My walkout wasn't a moral stand. It was a stress-induced breakdown. She was forgiving me for a sin I hadn't committed. "I am fine, Mom," I said, stepping out of her grip. "I am not stressed." "Oh, hush," she said playfully, tapping my nose. "You are always so serious, just like your father." She turned back to the sofa. There was no space left on it. "Oh dear," Marjorie said, looking around the crowded room. "We seem to be short on seating." She looked at me. Her eyes glittered with a malice that was invisible to everyone else. "Cynthia," Marjorie called out, her voice bright and teasing, "could you bring in a folding chair from the kitchen? We need to set an extra chair for Hazel's feelings." The room rippled with laughter. It was a joke, a callback to Thanksgiving. Hazel is so sensitive about chairs. Hazel is so dramatic. The laughter wasn't mean-spirited from the cousins. They just thought it was banter. They didn't know the context. They didn't know about the plant. They didn't know about the fraud. But Marjorie knew. She was taking the moment of my deepest humiliation and turning it into a punchline. She was signaling to me, "I own this story. I can make them laugh at your pain." My throat tightened. The heat rose in my cheeks. The old instinct to shrink, to smile, to play along, surged up in my chest. Just laugh. The instinct said, "Just be the good sport. Don't make a scene." I looked at Marjorie. She was smiling over the rim of her cider mug, challenging me. If I laughed, I accepted the role. I accepted that my boundaries were a joke. If I screamed, I proved I was unstable. I did neither. I set the bottle of wine down on the side table. The clink of glass against wood was sharp. "I am not here to be your example," I said. I didn't shout. I didn't whisper. I spoke with the flat, calm authority of a woman who manages millions of lines of code. The laughter died. Marjorie's smile faltered, just for a second. "Hazel, don't be so—" "I am not a prop for your performance," I said. "And I am not a punchline." I turned to Cynthia, who looked like she wanted to melt into the floorboards. "Thank you for the invitation, Aunt Cynthia," I said. "But I cannot stay." I walked out. I didn't run. I walked with a steady, measured pace. I felt the eyes on my back. But this time, they didn't burn. They felt irrelevant. I stepped out into the cold night air. The door clicked shut behind me. I walked toward my car. My heart was pounding, but it was a strong, steady rhythm. I had done it. I had refused the bait. "Hazel, wait!" I turned. Ethan was running down the driveway after me. He wasn't wearing a coat. He looked shivering and small in the expansive darkness of the suburbs. "Hazel, please," he said, catching up to me. "Don't go like that." "Like what?" I asked. "I came. I was insulted. I left. It seems like a very logical progression." "Mom didn't mean it," Ethan said. The automatic defense. The reflex of a lifetime. She's stressed. Dad is falling apart. Hazel, he sits in his office in the dark. He's crying. He embezzled $2 million. Ethan," I said, "he should be crying." Ethan flinched. "He made a mistake. He tried to fix things and it went wrong. But they are our parents. We have to help them." "You are helping them," I said. "You are helping them lie." "I am terrified," Ethan shouted. His voice cracked, echoing off the neighbor's perfectly manicured siding. "I am terrified, okay? If this blows up, Dad loses the firm, Mom loses the house. People will look at us like we are trash. I can't handle that. Hazel, I need them to be okay." He was crying now, real tears. He looked like the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. "I helped them invite the guests," he confessed, his voice dropping to a whisper. "For Thanksgiving, they told me if we had a big crowd, you would be too polite to say no to the job offer. I helped them set the trap. I am sorry. I am so sorry." He reached out for me. He wanted a hug. He wanted me to tell him it was okay, that I forgave him, that I would fix it. He wanted Big Sister Hazel to make the scary monster go away. I looked at his outstretched hand. I loved him. I loved him so much it hurt. But if I took his hand, I took the burden. If I soothed him, I validated his choice to betray me. I stepped back. "You let them do it," I said. Ethan froze. "You knew they were going to humiliate me," I said. "You knew about the plant. You knew about the contract. And you helped them because you were more afraid of them than you were loyal to me." "Hazel, I cannot fix this for you." "Ethan," I said, "and I cannot forgive you. Not yet." I got into my car. I started the engine. I watched him in the rearview mirror as I drove away, a lonely figure standing in the driveway, shrinking until he was just a shadow in the red glow of my taillights. The next morning, the war followed me to work. North Bank Analytics was my sanctuary. It was a place of logic, data, and clear outcomes. But when I walked into the break room to get my morning coffee, the conversation stopped. Greg, a senior VP who had always been competitive with me, was standing by the espresso machine. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Morning, Hazel," he said. "Rough weekend?" "Just family stuff," I said, reaching for a mug. "Yeah, I heard," Greg said casually. "My brother-in-law is on the board at the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. He mentioned things are getting interesting over there. Said there's a big investigation opening up, something about family involvement." He let the question hang in the air. It was a probe. He was fishing. He wanted to know if the family involvement included the newly promoted senior lead consultant at North Bank. "I wouldn't know," I said, keeping my voice cool. "I don't discuss my parents' business." "Right," Greg said. "Just you know how clients are. They get skittish about reputation risks. If your name is attached to anything messy—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The poison was spreading. My parents' desperation was leaking into my professional life. If rumors started circulating that I was under investigation for fraud, North Bank would drop me. They couldn't afford the liability. I left the coffee. I walked straight to the elevator and pressed the button for the human resources floor. I was not going to wait to be accused. I walked into the HR director's office. Sarah, the director, looked up in surprise. "Hazel, is everything okay?" I sat down. I folded my hands in my lap. "I need to make a disclosure," I said. "There is a situation involving my family and a nonprofit board. I want to be proactively clear with the firm about my position." I told her the truth, not the emotional truth, I didn't tell her about the missing chair or the extra chair for my feelings. I told her the professional truth. My father is under investigation, I said. He has attempted to pressure me into signing a consulting agreement to provide oversight for the entity in question. I have refused. I have legal counsel, and I have documented my refusal with the lead investigator on the case. I am bringing this to you because I want North Bank to know that I have absolutely no connection to the situation, despite what rumors might suggest. Sarah listened intently. She took notes. When I finished, she put her pen down. "Thank you, Hazel," she said. "Most people would have tried to hide this until it hit the news. Bringing it to us now. That shows a lot of integrity. We appreciate the transparency. As long as you are not legally implicated, your job is safe. We will shut down any office gossip." I walked out of her office feeling 10 pounds lighter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't hiding the family secret. I was exposing it to sunlight, and the sunlight wasn't burning me. It was sanitizing the wound. I went back to my desk and worked for 10 hours straight. I was brilliant. I was focused. I was Hazel Hall, senior lead consultant, and I was good at my job. When I got home that night, the mail was waiting on my counter. There was a thick, cream-colored envelope. I recognized the font. It was an invitation from the Ashford Creek Civic Trust. "You are cordially invited to the annual Community Unity Dinner, honoring the leadership of Dale Hall. December 14th, Harbor Light Conservatory." It wasn't just an invitation, it was a command. I flipped the card over. There was a handwritten note on the back. "We have reserved a table for the family. We expect you to be there. It would look very strange if the daughter was absent on the night her father is honored. Do not embarrass us." They were doing it again. They were setting another stage, a bigger stage. The Community Unity Dinner was the biggest event of the year. Hundreds of people, donors, politicians, business leaders, they were honoring Dale. They were going to stand up there and pretend everything was perfect, and they needed me in the audience, smiling and clapping, to validate the lie. If I didn't go, I was the bad daughter. If I went, I was the accomplice. I stared at the invitation. The cardstock was heavy, expensive. It probably cost $5 just to print this one card. Money they didn't have. I picked up my phone and called Mara. "I got an invite," I said. "To the fundraiser?" Mara asked. "Don't go. It's a trap." "I have to go," I said. "Hazel, no. They will corner you. They will put a microphone in your face. They will make you part of the show." "I know," I said. "But if I stay home, they control the story. They can say I'm sick, or I'm unstable, or I'm ungrateful. They can say whatever they want because I'm not there to dispute it." I looked at the invitation again. "I am going," I said, "but I am not going to sit at their table." "What are you going to do?" Mara asked. "I am going to buy my own ticket," I said, "and I'm going to bring my own witnesses. Help me plan this. Mara, I need a strategy." "Okay," Mara said, her voice shifting from lawyer to general. "If we do this, we do it with surgical precision, no emotion, just facts. We refuse the bait. We keep control of the narrative." "Exactly," I said. I put the invitation on my fridge, holding it there with a magnet. It wasn't an invitation anymore. It was a court summons. And this time, I was bringing the jury. The 2 weeks leading up to the Harbor Light Conservatory fundraiser were not filled with the dramatic, cinematic pacing of a legal thriller. They were filled with the heavy, suffocating silence of real life waiting for the other shoe to drop. I slept poorly. My nights were fragmented, broken into 2-hour blocks where I would wake up with my heart hammering against my ribs, convinced I had missed an email or a phone call that would end my career. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, replaying the moment at Thanksgiving. I saw the empty space where my chair should have been. I saw the plant. I heard the laughter. In the daylight, I functioned. I went to North Bank. I led meetings. I analyzed data sets. But beneath the surface, I was vibrating with a constant, low-level panic. My body wanted to run. It wanted to pack a bag, drive to the airport, and disappear to a place where the name Hall meant nothing. I had to practice staying calm. I had to breathe through the tightness in my chest. I had to remind myself, 10 times a day, that I was not the criminal here. I was the witness. It was during this quiet siege that I found an ally I did not expect. Aunt Cynthia called me on a Tuesday evening. She asked if she could stop by. Not to my apartment. She was too afraid of being seen by my parents. But to the coffee shop near my office. When she arrived, she looked like she hadn't slept either. Her hands shook as she unwrapped the sugar for her tea. "I wanted to apologize," she said, looking down at the table. "For the other night, at my house, I should have stopped Marjorie. I should have told her to leave. You were scared," I said. "Everyone is scared of her." "It is not just fear," Cynthia said. She looked up, and her eyes were wet. "I have watched them do this to you for years. Hazel, I watched them pick at you. If you got an A-, it was a tragedy. If you got a promotion, it wasn't the right title. They needed you to be small, and the more independent you became, the more they hated it." "They don't hate me," I said automatically. It was the old reflex. "They just have high standards." "No," Cynthia said firmly. "Marjorie hates that she cannot control you. She needs to be the sun, Hazel, and you refuse to be a planet that just orbits her. You became your own sun. That is why she targets you. That is why she took your chair. She wants to break you down until you fit back into the box she made for you." It was a validation I didn't know I needed. To have someone else, someone from inside the family, say it out loud. "It isn't you. It is them." "I need a favor." "Cynthia," I said. She flinched. "I cannot stand up to them publicly. Hazel, I cannot. Dale handles my husband's investments. If I cross him—" "I don't need you to stand up on a stage," I said. "I need a written statement, just a simple account of what happened at Thanksgiving and what happened at your house, the extra chair for Hazel's feelings comment. I need you to write it down, sign it, and date it." Cynthia went pale. "I won't use it unless I have to," I promised. "I won't drag you into a public war if I can avoid it. But if they try to say I am lying, if they try to say I imagined the humiliation, I need a witness. Please." She looked at her tea. She looked at the window. She was weighing her comfort against my survival. "Okay," she whispered. "I will write it, but promise me you will keep my name out of the papers unless it is absolutely necessary." "I promise," I said. "Boundaries with compassion." She wrote the statement on a napkin right there, then transferred it to a notepad I had in my bag. It was shaky, but it was the truth. I folded it and put it in my wallet. It felt like a shield. 2 days later, the attack came from a different angle. Ethan asked to meet me. He wouldn't come to my apartment, and he wouldn't go to a bar. He met me in the parking lot of a grocery store, sitting in his car with the engine running. He looked hollowed out. The golden child was tarnishing rapidly under the pressure. "They are telling people," he said, staring through the windshield. "Telling people what?" I asked. "That I am broke? I already debunked that." "No," Ethan said. They pivoted. "Dad is telling people you are unstable. He is telling the board members, the donors, anyone who asks why you aren't involved with the trust. He says you have been having a breakdown since your breakup with Mark." I felt the blood drain from my face. Mark. I hadn't thought about Mark in 2 years. We had dated for 3 years. We had lived together. When we broke up, I had been devastated. I had cried. I had taken a week off work. I had gone to my parents' house for a weekend, looking for comfort. I had sat at their kitchen table and wept, telling them how much it hurt, how lost I felt. They had listened. They had made me tea. They had told me it would be okay. And now, they were using that grief. They were taking the one moment I had been truly vulnerable with them, the one moment I had let them see me bleed, and they were weaponizing it to discredit me. "They are saying I am crazy because of an ex-boyfriend?" I asked. My voice was quiet, dangerous. "They are saying you are fragile," Ethan said. "That you have been erratic ever since. that you obsess over slights, that you imagine enemies. It is perfect, Hazel, because if you speak out against them, if you say they are committing fraud, they just nod and say, "Oh, poor Hazel. She is spiraling again, just like with Mark." It was so cruel, it took my breath away. It wasn't just a lie. It was a violation of intimacy. They had taken my pain and stored it in a jar, waiting for the moment it would be most useful to them. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I hate them," Ethan whispered. "I hate what they are doing." "But you are still going to the fundraiser," I said. He didn't answer. He just gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles were white. "You are going," I said, "because you are afraid that if you don't, they will do this to you." He nodded, a single, jerky motion. "I get it," I said. "But Ethan, when the building collapses, don't be standing next to the support beams." I got out of his car. I felt dirty. I felt like I needed to scrub my skin with steel wool. I called Lydia. I needed facts to wash away the feeling of betrayal. "I found the money trail," Lydia said. She sounded triumphant and exhausted. "I filed a public records request for the trust's vendor list. They tried to stall me, but the county clerk is a stickler." "What did you find?" 6 months ago, right before the money vanished, the trust fired their longtime construction vendor." Lydia said, "They hired a new company, Apex Solutions. The company had been incorporated 2 weeks prior. The address for Apex Solutions is a P.O. box in a strip mall in Delaware." "A shell company," I said. "And here's the kicker," Lydia said. "The signatory for Apex Solutions? It is not Dale. It is a man named Julian Vane." "I don't know him," I said. "Neither did I," Lydia said. "Until I looked him up. He was the college roommate of Kerrigan Slate's husband." The pieces clicked together with a sickening sound. It wasn't just my father making a bad investment. It was a network. Kerrigan Slate wasn't just fixing the mess. She was connected to the people who helped make it. The favoritism was systemic. They had funneled the money out to a friend, lost it, and were now scrambling to cover the hole before the auditors looked too closely at Apex Solutions. "This is bigger than family drama," I said. "This is conspiracy, and they want you to be the face of it," Lydia said. "Hazel, if you sign that paper, you are not just covering for Dale. You are covering for Kerrigan, for Julian Vane, for all of them." "I am not signing," I said. "I am going to that dinner, and I am going to make sure everyone knows I am not signing." The night before the fundraiser, the final emotional blow landed. I was coming home from work late. My bag was heavy on my shoulder. I walked into the lobby of my apartment building, thinking about a hot shower and a glass of wine, and there she was. Marjorie Hall was sitting on the sleek leather bench in the lobby. She was wearing a trench coat, belted tightly. She wasn't wearing makeup. Her hair was slightly mussed. She looked small. She looked broken. When she saw me, she stood up. Tears were already streaming down her face. "Hazel," she sobbed. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. The doorman was watching, looking concerned. A neighbor walking his dog slowed down, eyes wide. "Mom?" I stopped 10 feet away from her. I just needed to see you," she wept. She took a step toward me, her hands reaching out. "I can't sleep. I can't eat. I miss my little girl. Please, Hazel, please just come home. We can forget all of this. Just come home and let me hold you." She looked so convincing. For a second, a split second, the child inside me woke up. The child who wanted her mother to love her. The child who wanted to be held. She was offering me everything I had ever wanted. Affection, longing, pursuit. She had come to me. She was crying for me. But then I looked at her eyes, behind the tears, behind the red-rimmed lids. There was a sharpness. She was watching the doorman. She was checking to see if the audience was buying it. She was gauging my reaction, calculating the angle of entry. She wanted me to hug her. She wanted me to break down in the lobby. to be the emotional mess she had painted me as, or she wanted me to comfort her, to step back into the role of the dutiful daughter who soothes the mother's tantrums. If I hugged her, she won. If I hugged her, I was accepting the premise that this was just a family squabble and not a felony in progress. My heart ached. It physically hurt, a sharp, tearing sensation in the center of my chest. I wanted a mother. I just didn't want this one. I took a step back. "Leave," I said. Marjorie froze. Her hands were still outstretched. "Hazel, please," she wailed, louder this time, for the benefit of the neighbor with the dog. "I love you." "This isn't love," I said quietly. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just spoke the truth. "Love doesn't ask you to commit a crime," I said. "Love doesn't take your chair away. Love doesn't tell people you are crazy." I looked at the doorman. "Patrick, this woman is not a guest. Please ask her to leave." Marjorie's face changed. It happened in an instant. The tears didn't just stop. They evaporated. The trembling lips steadied. The posture straightened. The broken mother vanished. And the general appeared. She took a step closer to me. She leaned in, so close I could smell the mint on her breath. "You will regret humiliating us," she whispered. Her voice was a razor blade wrapped in silk. "You think you are strong," she hissed, "but you are nothing without us. You are just a lonely, ungrateful girl in a rented apartment, and we will crush you." The switch was chilling. It confirmed everything. The grief was a costume. The cruelty was the skin underneath. She turned on her heel. She walked past the doorman with her head high, wiping her face with a tissue, composing herself before she even hit the street. I stood in the lobby, shaking, not with sadness, but with adrenaline. She had shown her hand. There was no love left. There was only the war. I went upstairs and wrote my statement. I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad. I didn't write a speech. I didn't write an emotional plea. I wrote 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1. I, Hazel Hall, am a private citizen and a senior lead consultant at North Bank Analytics. I am not, and have never been, affiliated with the Ashford Creek Civic Trust in any professional capacity. Paragraph 2. Any documents, memos, or verbal statements suggesting I serve as a compliance advisor or financial overseer for the trust are false and were created without my consent. Paragraph 3. I have refused all requests to sign such agreements. I am not responsible for the financial decisions of the trust, nor for the communications strategies employed by its board. It was dry. It was boring. It was perfect. I typed it up. I printed 20 copies. I put them in my purse. The day of the fundraiser dawned cold and gray. The sky was the color of slate. I dressed like I was going to a board meeting, not a party. I wore a black dress, tailored and sharp, no frills, no lace. I wore my hair back. I put on the diamond studs I had bought for myself when I got my promotion. Lydia met me at my apartment. Mara met us there too. "We are your phalanx," Mara said. She was wearing a red blazer that looked like a warning sign. "We stick together," Lydia said. "No wandering off?" We took a rideshare to the Harbor Light Conservatory. It was a massive glass structure on the waterfront, glowing with light against the dark winter sky. As we walked up the path, I saw the valet stand. I saw the photographers. I saw the people my parents wanted to impress. We checked in at the welcome desk. "Name?" the volunteer asked. "Hazel Hall," I said. "Plus 2 guests. I purchased the tickets online." I saw the volunteer pause. She looked at a list. She looked at another list. "Oh," she said. "Ms. Hall, your parents have a table reserved. You are seated at the head table." "No," I said clearly. "I am not. We will be taking general seating." The volunteer looked confused, but she handed me the wristbands. We walked into the main hall. It was beautiful. Thousands of fairy lights were strung from the glass ceiling. There were centerpieces of white roses and silver branches. It smelled of expensive perfume and catering. And there they were. Dale and Marjorie were holding court near the stage. Dale was wearing a tuxedo. He was smiling, shaking hands, clapping men on the back. He looked successful. He looked trustworthy. Marjorie was in a gold gown. She shimmered. She was laughing, tilting her head back, playing the role of the gracious hostess. Kerrigan Slate was moving through the room like a conductor. She was touching elbows, whispering in ears, steering people toward the bar, toward the auction items. She was managing the energy of the room, keeping it high, keeping it positive. When I walked in, Kerrigan saw me first. Her eyes narrowed. She tapped her earpiece, murmuring something. Then Dale saw me. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then brightened into something blinding and terrifying. He said something to the man he was talking to and started walking toward me. "Formation," Mara whispered. Lydia stepped to my left. Mara stepped to my right. Dale reached us. "Hazel," he boomed. "You made it. And you brought friends. Wonderful." He reached out to hug me. I didn't step back, but I didn't lean in. I let him hug my stiff shoulders. "Dad," I said. He pulled back, keeping his hand on my arm. He squeezed it, hard. "Can I steal you for a second?" he asked. "Just a quick family chat." "I am staying with my guests," I said. "Just over here," he insisted, pulling me slightly toward a quiet alcove near the coat check. "Please, Hazel, 2 minutes." I looked at Mara. She nodded imperceptibly. 2 minutes. We are watching. I walked with him to the alcove. As soon as we were out of direct earshot, his smile dropped. "You need to sit at the table," he said. His voice was a low hiss. "I bought my own tickets," I said. "It looks bad," he said. "People are watching. If you sit in the back, it raises questions." "You should have thought about that before you told people I was crazy," I said. Dale winced. "That was strategy. We had to explain your absence." "I am here now," I said. "So you don't need to explain it." He reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Hazel," he said, "I have a new version of the agreement. I had Kerrigan rewrite it. It is much lighter. No liability clause. Just a simple advisory role. If you sign this, just this, we can announce it tonight. We can say you are helping us modernize. It fixes everything." He held it out to me. His hand was shaking. "If you do this," he whispered, "I will restore your trust fund. I will put the 50,000 back. I will double it. I will make sure you always have a seat at this table. You will be the heir. Hazel, not Ethan, you." He was trying to buy me, with my own stolen money. He was offering me the position of favorite child in exchange for my integrity. I looked at the paper. I looked at his desperate, sweating face. "I don't want to be the heir to a fraud, Dad," I said. "It is not fraud," he hissed. "It is a liquidity problem." "I am not signing," I said. "And I am not sitting at your table." "You ungrateful," he started, his face turning red. "I am going back to my friends," I said. I turned and walked away. I walked back to Mara and Lydia. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange calm. I had passed the test. We walked into the dining area to find our seats. The tables were round, draped in silver linens. We found 3 seats at a table near the back, next to the kitchen doors, but as I sat down, I looked toward the front of the room. The head table was on a riser, elevated above everyone else. It was set for 10 people. Dale sat in the center. Marjorie sat next to him. Ethan was there, looking like he wanted to vomit. Kerrigan was there. The mayor was there. And right next to Dale, on his left-hand side, there was an empty chair. It wasn't just empty, it was staged. There was a place card. It was large, written in calligraphy. Even from the back of the room, I could see the shape of the letters. Hazel Hall. And draped over the back of the chair was a white pashmina shawl. My shawl. One I had left at their house at Christmas. They had set the stage. They had placed the chair there to make it look like I was expected, like I was supposed to be there, by his side. But I had failed to show up. Or perhaps, worse, they were going to claim I was there in spirit. The sick daughter whose seat was being held in honor. It was a theatrical reversal of Thanksgiving. At Thanksgiving, they removed the chair to say, "You are out." Here, they placed the chair to say, "We are waiting for you, and you are abandoning us." They were using the empty chair to tell a story of their own benevolence and my cruelty. "Look at that," Lydia whispered, following my gaze. "They are unbelievable. They are trying to rewrite history," I said. "What are you going to do?" Mara asked. I watched my father take his seat. I watched him touch the empty chair, looking at it with a performance of longing for the benefit of the audience. "I am going to let them start the show," I said. "And then I am going to finish it." The salad course was served with a side of suffocating tension. I sat at table 42, near the kitchen doors, flanked by Lydia and Mara. We were far enough away from the head table that I didn't have to make eye contact with my parents, but close enough that I could see every detail of their performance, and it was a performance. Dale Hall sat in the center of the dais, looking every inch the benevolent patriarch. He laughed at the mayor's jokes. He toasted the donors. He touched the shoulder of the man next to him with that practiced, warm familiarity that had convinced half the town to trust him with their money. Marjorie sat beside him, glittering in gold. She ate small, precise bites. Every few minutes, she would turn to the empty chair on Dale's left, the chair with my name card and my old pashmina draped over it, and offer a sad, wistful smile. It was a masterclass in nonverbal storytelling. She was telling 300 people that she was the grieving mother holding space for a wayward child. I watched them, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel the pull to go to them. The invisible tether that had yanked me back to their approval for 33 years had snapped. I wasn't a satellite anymore. I was an asteroid, and I was about to impact. "Eat something," Lydia whispered, nudging my arm. "You need the energy." "I am fine," I said. My voice was steady, which surprised me. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my hands were still. The waiters cleared the plates. The lights dimmed. A spotlight hit the podium at the center of the stage. Kerrigan Slate walked up to the microphone. She looked impeccable in a black dress that cost more than my car. She smiled, a shark baring its teeth. "Good evening, everyone," she purred. "Welcome to the annual Community Unity Dinner. We are here to celebrate the spirit of giving, the spirit of trust, and no one exemplifies that trust more than the chairman of the Ashford Creek Civic Trust, Dale Hall." Applause rippled through the room. It was polite, enthusiastic. These people didn't know about Apex Solutions. They didn't know about the P&O box in Delaware. They only knew the man who shook their hands at church. Dale stood up. He buttoned his tuxedo jacket. He walked to the podium. Waving humbly, he waited for the applause to die down. "Thank you," he said. His voice was rich, warm, filled with a manufactured emotion. "Thank you, Kerrigan, and thank you to all of you. Looking out at this room, I don't see donors. I see family." He paused for effect. "Family is the bedrock of what we do," Dale continued. "And like any family, we face challenges. We face misunderstandings." He let the word hang there. Misunderstandings. "Sometimes," Dale said, his voice dropping to a somber, intimate register. "People we love lose their way. They struggle with their own demons. They let their emotions cloud their judgment. And when that happens, we don't turn them away. We keep a seat open for them." He turned. He looked directly at the empty chair at the head table. The spotlight followed his gaze, illuminating the white shawl and the name card, Hazel Hall. Then, slowly, deliberately, he lifted his eyes. He scanned the room until he found table 42. He locked eyes with me. "We keep a seat open," he repeated, "because we hope that eventually they will remember who they are." The room turned. 300 heads swiveled in my direction. They saw me sitting in the back, in the shadows. They saw the rebellious daughter who had refused her father's honor. They saw the unstable woman who was making a scene by being absent from her place. Marjorie put a hand to her chest, looking pained. Kerrigan watched me with cold, predatory anticipation. This was the trap. If I stayed silent, I accepted the shame. I confirmed their story that I was the problem. If I ran out, I confirmed their story that I was unstable. They thought those were my only two options, compliance or flight. I chose option 3. I placed my hands on the table and pushed my chair back. The scrape of metal against the floor was loud in the silence. I stood up. "Sit down, Hazel," Mara whispered, her hand hovering near my elbow. "You don't have to do this." "Yes," I said. "I do." I didn't have a microphone, but I had the acoustics of the conservatory, and I had the adrenaline of a woman who had been silenced for 3 decades. "I appreciate the sentiment. Dad," I said. My voice carried. It was clear. It was calm. Dale froze at the podium. He hadn't expected me to speak. He had expected me to shrink. "However," I continued, projecting my voice to the center of the room, "I feel it is important to clarify why that chair is empty." "Hazel," Dale said into the microphone, offering a pitying chuckle. "Honey, this isn't the time. We can talk about this at home. Everyone, please forgive my daughter. She has been under a lot of strain." "I am not under strain," I said. "I am under investigation." The word investigation landed like a glass vase shattering on a tile floor. The murmurs stopped instantly. The pity in the room evaporated, replaced by a sharp, hungry curiosity. "I am not an employee of the Ashford Creek Civic Trust," I said. "I have never been a consultant. I have never signed a contract, and I have never authorized the use of my name on any compliance documents." Dale gripped the podium. "Hazel, sit down. You are making a scene. You are emotional." "I am being precise," I said. "On Thanksgiving Day, November 28th, at your home on Cedar Hollow Lane, you removed my seat from the table. You told me there was no seat for disappointments. You did this in front of witnesses, including Ms. Slate." I saw Kerrigan stiffen. "On November 29th, I continued, ticking the dates off on my fingers, "you sent me a letter asking me to meet with Ms. Slate. At that meeting, I was presented with a document titling me as a senior compliance advisor for the trust. I refused to sign it." "She is confused," Marjorie called out from the table. Her voice was shrill. She stood up, her gold dress catching the light. "She has been confused since her breakup. She doesn't know what she is saying." "I have the document," I said. I didn't shout it. I just stated it as a fact. "I have a photograph of the contract Ms. Slate asked me to sign," I said. "And I have submitted an affidavit to the state investigator, Mr. Ronan Pike, confirming that I have refused the role." Mara stood up next to me. She was wearing her red blazer, and she looked like a sword drawn from a sheath. "I am Mara Keene," she announced, her voice professional and sharp. "I am legal counsel for Ms. Hall. We have documented evidence of attempted coercion and misrepresentation of Ms. Hall's professional status. We have provided this evidence to the Oversight Committee." The room was buzzing now. This wasn't a family squabble anymore. This was a legal threat. Kerrigan Slate realized she was losing control of the room. She stepped up to the podium, practically shoving Dale aside. "This is highly inappropriate," Kerrigan said, her voice tight. "This is a private family matter that is being aired at a community event. Ms. Hall, I must ask you to leave. You are disrupting the evening." "You asked me to sign a document that included a liability clause," I said, looking directly at Kerrigan. "Clause 4, Section 3? Kerrigan stopped. Her mouth opened, then closed. "Clause 4, Section 3, I repeated. It stated that the advisor assumes full retroactive liability for all external communications regarding the financial status of the project. That is a very specific detail for a confused woman to know, isn't it, Kerrigan?" The specificity did it. You could feel the belief in the room shift. A confused, emotional daughter doesn't quote contract clauses. A confused daughter screams about feelings. I was quoting legal text. That is a draft, Kerrigan snapped. It was a standard draft. It was a trap, I said. And I didn't step in it. Dale leaned into the microphone. He was sweating now. The charm was gone, melting away under the heat of the spotlight to reveal the desperate, angry man underneath. You are ungrateful, he boomed. The sound system whined with feedback. After everything we did for you, after we protected you, you come here and try to destroy my reputation? I am your father. You are a fraud, Dale, a voice said from the side of the room. It wasn't me. I turned. Aunt Cynthia was standing up. She was shaking. She was clutching her napkin like a lifeline, but she was standing. Cynthia, sit down, Marjorie hissed. No, Cynthia said. Her voice was weak. But in the silence, it was loud enough. I was there, at Thanksgiving. I saw the plant. They took her chair away. And I was at my house when Marjorie made a joke about setting an extra chair for Hazel's feelings. They have been mocking her for weeks. It isn't a misunderstanding. It is cruelty. A gasp rippled through the room. The social veneer was cracking. The Halls weren't the perfect family with a troubled daughter. They were bullies. Dale looked at Cynthia. Betrayal written all over his face. Then he looked back at me. His eyes were wild. He was losing the audience. He was losing the narrative. He was losing everything. I paid for you, he shouted. He lost his composure completely. He pointed a finger at me, trembling with rage. I paid for your college. I paid for your car. I paid for your life. You are who you are because of me. You owe me this. You owe me your signature. The room went dead silent. There it was, the truth. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about family. It was a transaction. He had invested in me, and now he was calling in the debt. He viewed me as a product he had purchased, and he was angry that the product was malfunctioning. I felt a strange sense of peace settle over me. The hurt was gone. The longing was gone. All that was left was clarity. I looked at him across the sea of tables. You didn't raise me into a person, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like a knife. You raised me into a role, I said. You raised me to be the audience for your performance. You raised me to be the scapegoat for your mistakes, and now you want me to be the shield for your crimes. I paused. I looked at Marjorie, who was staring at me with a hatred so pure it was almost beautiful. I am not a role, I said. I am a person, and I am resigning from this production. I picked up my purse. I have already provided my documentation to Mr. Pike, I said to the room at large. I will not be answering further questions. I turned to leave. Hazel, Dale screamed. If you walk out that door, you are cut off. You hear me? You get nothing. No inheritance. No family. You are nothing. I didn't stop. I walked toward the exit. Mara and Lydia fell in step beside me. But before I reached the doors, a voice rang out from the head table. Stop it! It was a young man's voice, cracking, terrified. I turned back. Ethan was standing up. He looked sick. He was gripping the tablecloth so hard his knuckles were white. He was looking at Dale, then at me, then at the room. Ethan, sit down, Marjorie hissed. Grabbing his arm, Ethan yanked his arm away. It was a setup, he said. He spoke into the silence, his voice trembling violently. The empty chair, Ethan said, pointing at the table. It was Mom's idea. She told the caterers to set it. She said if we made it look like Hazel abandoned us, people wouldn't believe her when the news came out. She said we had to destroy her credibility first. Ethan! Dale roared. He reached for his son. Ethan stepped back, knocking over his wineglass. Red wine spilled across the white tablecloth like blood. And the money, Ethan sobbed. I saw the transfer. Dad, I saw you move it to Apex. Hazel didn't do it. You did. The sound that went through the room was a collective intake of breath. The facade didn't just crack. It shattered. It fell to the floor in a million sharp, jagged pieces. Dale stood there, his hand outstretched, frozen. Marjorie covered her face with her hands. Kerrigan's slate was already typing furiously on her phone, likely trying to destroy evidence or distance herself before the police arrived. I looked at my brother. He was crying. He was broken. But for the first time in his life, he was standing on his own 2 feet. "Thank you, Ethan," I whispered. "I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't stay to watch the police arrive, or the donors demand their money back, or the reporters swarm the stage." I turned and pushed open the heavy glass doors of the conservatory. The cold night air hit me like a physical blow. It was sharp and clean. It smelled of the ocean and dead leaves. I walked down the concrete path, away from the lights, away from the noise, away from the heat of the destruction. I stopped at the edge of the parking lot. I leaned against a lamppost and looked up at the sky. There were no stars, just the gray, heavy clouds of winter. My hands started to shake. The adrenaline was leaving my body, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion. Lydia and Mara caught up to me. "Hazel," Lydia said. She sounded breathless. I have never seen anything like that. "Is Ethan okay?" I asked. "He is still inside," Mara said. "But he told the truth. Once that bottle is uncorked, you can't put it back." "They are going to arrest Dad," I said. It wasn't a question. "Probably," Mara said. "And Kerrigan, and Julian Vane, and maybe your mother, if she signed the transfers." I closed my eyes. I thought about the house on Cedar Hollow Lane. I thought about the perfectly manicured lawn. I thought about the portraits of the ancestors in the hallway. It was all going to be gone. The lawyers would take it. The government would take it. "I lost my family," I said. "No," Lydia said. She stepped in front of me and took my cold hands in hers. "You lost the people who held you hostage. Hazel, you kept the ones who matter." She squeezed my hands. "You have me," Lydia said. "You have Ethan. I think you have Mara. And you have yourself," Mara added, "which is more than you had yesterday." I took a deep breath. The air filled my lungs, expanding my chest. It hurt, but it was a good hurt. It was the pain of a muscle being used for the first time. I looked back at the conservatory. I could see figures moving frantically through the glass windows. I could see the flashing lights of a police cruiser turning into the driveway. I turned my back on it. "What now?" Lydia asked. I looked at my car. I looked at the road stretching out in front of me. I thought about my apartment. I thought about my job. I thought about the $50,000 my grandmother had left me, the money that had been stolen to prop up a lie. I would never get it back. But I had something else. I had the truth. And I had the silence in my head, finally free of their voices telling me I wasn't enough. "Now," I said, opening my car door. "Now I build a life where a chair isn't something I have to earn." I got in, started the engine, and drove away into the dark, quiet night. Thank you for listening to Hazel's story. It is a story about the hardest kind of revenge, the kind where you simply refuse to play the game anymore. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Are you in a city like Hazel? Are you in the suburbs? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel. We have many more stories coming about justice, truth, and the moments that change everything. Please share your thoughts on Hazel's decision in the comments in English. Did she do the right thing by walking away? I read every comment, and I can't wait to hear what you think.